Texas. His sister was interviewed. And she said last year when he was 17 years old, he asked her to purchase the AR-15 for him. And she refused to do so. Good for her. He asked her to purchase it for him then because he wasn't old enough yet. He wasn't 18. So he couldn't purchase it legally in the state of Texas. So what he did on his 18th birthday, the very same day he turned 18 years old, he went and purchased the weapon that he used to kill 21 people, 19, 9 and 10-year-olds, and 11-year-olds, and 2 brave teachers at Robb Elementary School in Uvalde. The shooter in Tulsa, just this week, folks, I'm talking about 3 or 4 days ago. The shooter in Tulsa went on the day of the shooting, because in Oklahoma they have a very lax, as a matter of fact, they passed the anti-red flag law. Can you believe that? I can. So on the day of the shooting, folks, not a few days before or a couple weeks ago, no, the day of the shooting, he went and purchased the automatic weapon that he used to go into the hospital there in Tulsa and gun down the surgeon. By the way, just throwing it out here, both the shooter there was black. The doctor that he killed was his doctor, was black, as well as one of the other doctors was a white doctor, and 2 of the nurses that worked there, as well as a patient. Folks, he purchased that weapon the day of the shooting. And you gonna tell me that we don't need background checks? If they just would have had a background check, he would have had to wait.
Right.
2 hours after he purchased the weapon, he went and gunned these people down and then turned the weapon on himself and killed himself. So this is what we need. So I'm not just coming on the air just talking and saying, talking about people and what they're not doing. I'm telling you, if I was in a position in the legislature somewhere, this is what I would propose to do. Folks, this has got to stop. That broke my heart the other day when I saw that report of that child saying to their mother, "Mommy, what picture are you going to use for me?" No 9-year-old should have to even think about that. You're listening to The Right Side on No Static Radio. We don't do the static, but we shouldn't bring more. So, another week, another mass shooting. Where do we go from here? That's my proposal. Those are my 5 points of where I think we need to go in order to reduce the amount of these mass shootings that we are seeing that, listen, are unique to America. Because you know what other countries do when this happens? You know what they did in Scotland when they had a mass shooting there? They banned the automatic weapon. You know what they did in New Zealand when the man went and shot the mosque up, killed 41 people? By the way, he was the inspiration for Peyton Gendron, the Buffalo shooter. You know what the Prime Minister of New Zealand did? The very couple days afterwards, they banned automatic weapons in New Zealand. They haven't had a mass shooting since in New Zealand. They haven't had a mass shooting since in Scotland. I saw a report last night that America leads the so-called Western nations in the percentage rate of people who are going to die by gun violence. 3.96% of American people. So that's almost 4%. Well, 4%, that's not much. Yeah, okay. You say that until it's one of your family members. That is a lot. That's almost 4% of this population. Welcome to the right side, caller. State your name and where you're calling from. Welcome to the right side, caller. State your name and where you're calling from.
Hello.
Are you there? I hear you. Okay, I guess they didn't want to talk. By contrast, 3.96%. In Britain, it's 0.5%. Sweden was the lowest. It was either Sweden or Norway. I can't remember. I don't have the stats here in front of me. Forgive me. I should have screenshotted and brought them in. But Sweden was the lowest, and theirs was like at 0.01% of people in that country dying by gun violence. The countries that took action after they had mass shootings have not had mass shootings since. So I don't know. I'll let you draw your own conclusions. I just put it out there. You tell me. 216-939-5087, which leads me to our next topic. In the state of Ohio, where I currently reside, where the show broadcasts from the state of Ohio, the Ohio House and Senate. Welcome to the right side, caller. State your name and where you're calling from.
George Wilson from Euclid.
Hello, George. What's on your mind?
Good show, Jeff. Before you go to the next topic, I have a question. Do you think, with all these shootings that's happening in our country, do you think this is an effect from the pandemic? What's your opinion on that?
Well, no, you know what, George? No, and I'm gonna tell you why. Because Parkland happened 2 years before the pandemic. Newtown, Sandy, the mass shooting at Sandy Hook Elementary School, that happened 8 years before the pandemic. The shooting at Mother Emanuel AME Church in Charleston, South Carolina, that happened 5 years before the pandemic. You see a pattern here? The shooting in Pittsburgh at Tree of Life Synagogue happened 2 years before the pandemic. So while I think that perhaps, because even Peyton Gendron, the shooter in Buffalo, said that he was bored during the pandemic, so he went online and started reading all these, basically these hate group websites, and that is what radicalized him. But unfortunately, this was a problem that predated the pandemic. So no, I'm not going to go there on that because, as I said, we've had mass shootings prior to the pandemic. I didn't even get into what happened at the country western concert in Las Vegas, which was before the pandemic, where 43 people were killed, or with the movie theater in outside of Denver in 2012, where I forget how many were killed. You know, these all start to run together so much that I can't even recall all of them. So no, I don't, because I think this was a problem that existed and predated the pandemic. Now, in these other cases, especially in the one in Buffalo, would that have happened if there was no pandemic? I don't know. I just know what the shooter said, that during the pandemic he got bored and started going on websites and reading this hate speech and all these racist websites that were there, and that's what radicalized him. So maybe that one individual But Salvador Ramos, who did the killing in Uvalde, killed Mexican American kids, and he was a Mexican American himself.
Yeah.
The shooter.
I love your tips also. Question: do you feel like some of the publicity, like when this happened, it's just this is all you see on the news, on the radio, we talking about it now.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think if we was to minimize, I don't know how, some way we would not talk about it so much, it wouldn't get that much TV coverage, do you think that would help? Because until they make legislations on the gun laws, that's not going to make a change. But do you think the TV coverage and how we talk about it, how we go about after it happens, do you think that would put a dent in it?
Possibly, but there's a paradox there, though. I mean, so the sad thing is that these things aren't out the norm anymore. That's the sad thing. But how could you not report 19, 10-year-olds, 9, 10, and 11-year-olds being gunned down in a class in a school building? You know, so that's the conundrum there. You can't just overlook it, because George, it's like this. If you have rodents in your house, say you have mice or rats in your house, and you overlook it, well, I'm just gonna overlook it. I'm not gonna pay attention to them. They're not gonna go away. And if anything, is going to your problem is going to become worse until you do something about it. So I don't think, but I see your point. I see what you're saying is that some person sitting there watching all this coverage is sitting there thinking, if I do this, then I can become famous too, and they'll be talking about me on television all week and on cable news and all of that and on talk shows. So I see your point. And I see where you're going there, and what you're trying to get at, but I don't think it will stop them at all, because it's too much easy access to automatic weapons to carry out these types of events, and they know, the perpetrators of this know that when they do this, that it is going to be covered. So that's the paradox, I guess.
But thanks. I love your suggestions, and I'm going to continue to listen. Yeah, have a good one.
Okay, thanks. Thanks for listening, George. Thanks for calling. So, as I was saying, here in the state of Ohio, the House of Representatives passed a bill, the predominantly Republican House, passed a bill called House Bill 99. And what House Bill, and they sent it on to the Senate, and it passed the Senate. What House Bill 99 allows is for teachers to legally be armed in a classroom. So in other words, what this bill does is now allow teachers to bring weapons, firearms, into the classroom, to be in the words of those who propose this legislation, to be that first line of defense, to be that deterrent to school shooters. It passed the House, the predominantly Republican House in Ohio, House of Representatives, passed the predominantly Republican Senate here in Ohio. It has subsequently been sent back to the House because there's been some new language to it. You see, what the original language was that the teachers would have to get 700 hours of training, which is what police officers get, 700 hours of training, in order to be able to legally bring these weapons into the classroom. And after much discussion, the proponents of this legislation decided that that was too much. That would take too long. And here's the lunacy of this, folks. The lunacy of it is that the proponents of this bill are saying, well, after all, we're not expecting teachers to be police officers, so why should they get the same training that police officers get? But then on the other hand, they want them to do what police officers do. Am I the only one that's seeing this, or am I crazy? So in other words, you're saying that you don't want these teachers to go through 700 hours of training, which is the same amount of time that police officers go through in the academy, to become proficient with their weapon, because, you know, they need their weapons on the street. You don't want them to go through that because, after all, we're not training them to be police officers. But on the other hand, you're saying we want them to do what police officers do. Maybe I'm crazy. Maybe I'm crazy, and I'm the only one who says or thinks that this doesn't make any sense at all. Folks, this shows you where we're at in this country right now. We have reached a new level of crazy. We have reached a new level of crazy in this country, where they would even propose something like this and not see the hypocrisy and the lunacy in the whole legislation. You don't want them to get the same training police officers get, which I don't want the bill in the first place. Okay, let me make that perfectly clear here. But the proponents of this don't want the teachers to have to go through the same thing that police officers go through, but you want them to do what police officers do and take down a criminal if they have to, a shooter in the school. So they changed the language in the bill now. So the Senate sent it back to the House, where now the teachers would only get 24 hours of training instead of 700 hours. Not training for a whole 24-hour day, but their training sessions would accumulate to 24 hours worth of training. By the way, there is no teachers union in the state of Ohio that supports this. There, to my knowledge, let me preface this by saying this. To my knowledge, there is no school district, to my knowledge, in the state of Ohio that supports this legislation. To my knowledge, there is no police department within the state of Ohio that supports this legislation. They brought a student to the hearing on the legislation, a 15-year-old student who did not support the legislation. Yet, and again, I'm not playing partisan politics. I don't ride donkeys or elephants. That's why we call this the right side. I come down on the right side. Yet these Republican politicians, though, want to get this legislation. And here's the thing, it's going to pass, because Republicans control the Senate and the House in the state of Ohio. So when they reword the language in this bill, it's going to pass. And Governor Mike DeWine, the governor of the state of Ohio, has already come on record saying he's going to sign it into law. Now, that shouldn't shock you, because this is the same Mike DeWine who signed into law in the state of Ohio this Stand Your Ground bill that came out, that was signed into law about 2 years ago, that we had State Congresswoman Juanita Brent on the show talking about a couple of years ago. So I want you all to remember that in November. Those of you that are listening to me in the state of Ohio right now, I want you all to remember that when you go into the voting booth, whether you actually go on election day on November 8th, or if you do absentee ballot, I want you to remember that Mike DeWine signed into law the Stand Your Ground bill, and he's going to sign into law this House Bill 99. The reason why I'm saying that is I hear a lot of people talking, well, you know, Governor DeWine, he did a great job during COVID. And
no,
I respect his job that he did and all of that, and la-da-da-da-da. No, okay. But listen, this man has already signed one dangerous piece of legislation into law, because he could have vetoed it. And he's about to sign another dangerous piece of legislation. Folks, if you listened to the program last week, you heard my guest last week say that no teacher wants guns in the classroom for obvious reasons. It does not make sense. We already went over the thing about the good guy with a gun with the bad guy. So you train a teacher, they have the gun, the school shooter comes in with body armor on. What's that teacher going to do? And it causes so many other problems. So what happens when a teacher feels that a student is about to physically attack them and that teacher has a gun? So that teacher can go in their drawer and pull out the gun and shoot them? Oh, that's not going to happen. Oh, you don't think so, huh? Okay. Who's naive now? Or a student can get into the drawer and get the gun out of the teacher's drawer. You don't think that might happen? Folks, it's almost giving me a headache. This is just common, this is not even common sense. Instead of doing what you should do, you're doing everything but that because you are so afraid of the National Rifle Association and their lobby. And the thing is, you're not even doing the things that most of your people who support you, that all the polls show 90% of the American public, not 90% of Democrats, 90% of voters in this country support background checks. 75% support red flag laws. There is not a consensus majority of people that support teachers having guns in the classroom. And yet, the idiots that we have elected in the state of Ohio, in the House of Representatives, in the Senate, and in the governor's mansion are going to put some idiotic, ridiculous, crazy legislation on the books here in the state of Ohio. Telling you right now, folks, I'm coming out right now, vote for Nan Whaley for governor this year in the state of Ohio. Mike DeWine has got to go. He has got to go. I don't care what he did during COVID. That has no meaning. If he's going to sign some insane legislation like these two bills, he already signed one in the legislation, and he said he's going to sign this one in. He has got to go. So those of you that listen to me in the state of Ohio right now, when it comes time to vote, be it by absentee ballot, vote by mail, or if you're going to go in person, vote for Nan Whaley for governor of the state of Ohio. I don't care what her stand is on anything else. At least she's not supporting craziness like this. And by the way, she has good positions on other things too. So any of you that are listening now that are part of the Nan Whaley campaign, get that out to her, that the right side has endorsed her for governor and would love to have her come on the show one day. Mike DeWine's got to go. I can't do anything about those Republican senators and Congress people because they're not in my district, so I can't vote for them or vote against them, rather. But I can vote to get rid of Mike DeWine, and you got to go, Joker. You got to go, Jack. Welcome to the Right Side, caller. State your name and where you're calling from.
Hi, this is Dee from Euclid.
Hello, Dee.
I'm with you. What is wrong with people? How can you have assault rifles that are meant to be in war carried up and down the street? And then the law that you just talked about, the stand your ground law, and you know, the guns in the teacher's desk. What is wrong with DeWine? I don't get it.
Like I said, we reached a new level of crazy here. Well, first of all, with the assault weapons, there's a large percentage of the Republican Party that is in the pocket of the NRA. They're either in the pocket of the NRA or they're afraid to stand up to the NRA. As I said almost an hour ago, when the assault weapons ban was passed as part of the 1994 crime bill, when that assault weapons ban was passed, that passed with bipartisan support, 53 to 28, with the others abstaining. So what happened between, and then the bill, the assault weapons ban was allowed to expire during the second term of the Bush administration in 2004. So what happened? What happened to those same Republican senators who voted in 1994 to put in an assault weapons ban in the 1994 crime bill? What happened between 94 and 2004, especially D? I could see if we just had a rash of mass shootings or what have you. Let me take that back. No, I couldn't see. But the thing is that during that time period, there was a precipitous drop in mass shootings in this country. It's a 40% drop in the number of mass shootings when you had this assault weapons ban. And now when you let it expire, you've seen what's happened in this country since 2004. The shootings in the movie theater in Denver happened after 2004. The shootings at the Country and Western concert in Las Vegas happened since 2004. Not Columbine, that was in 99, but Sandy Hook, Marjorie Stoneman Douglas, Uvalde, all happened since 1994. Not to mention the shootings in the church and the synagogue. So it doesn't make sense. I don't get it. That's what I'm saying.
Get it?
It just makes me crazy thinking about it.
So I could see the money part, the pockets that he's lining of those that go along with the assault rifles. But why are they afraid of them?
That's a good question. That is a good question. I wish I knew the answer to that. I don't know why these politicians are afraid of the NRA, especially since the NRA does not have the juice that it once had with all the scandals that have rocked it over the last few years or so. And yet, these politicians are still afraid of them, and they're still indebted to them for their. The gun lobby is a very prominent lobby within Washington, D.C. So, I know, and I get the whole root of this whole thing. I get it is a sin problem. I understand that. I know that's the root of it all. But there are some things that we as a government can do to address this. As I said, it's not going to take it all away. It's not just going to disappear overnight, but it can drastically reduce things. And the proof is, that you have to do is look at the other countries that I mentioned. Mental illness is not unique to the United States. They got mental illness all over the world. Why are we having mass shootings in Britain or Germany or France?
Right.
There's crazy. No, excuse me. I shouldn't say crazy. There are mentally ill people in those countries too. There are mentally ill people in Canada. You don't see mass shootings there.
Crazy. Well, I just wanted to get your take because I don't get it. I don't understand how somebody can have that type of data and not be able to open their eyes and say, maybe there is something to not have an assault weapon. What do you need it for if you're not out shooting the Russians?
Exactly.
I don't get it.
Exactly. Assault weapons are not made for hunting animals. Assault weapons are made for hunting people. Because of the caliber and the speed of these. To give you an example, D, and this hurts my heart to say this, but in the shooting in Uvalde, Texas, those bullets did so much damage to those children that some of the parents could only identify their children by the DNA swab.
That brought tears to my eyes, the whole incident. How could you?
Right.
Exactly. So they're not. So when you're going to hunt game, you're not going to use a weapon like that because it's going to destroy. It will destroy the deer that it'll literally blow the deer apart that you're shooting.
Right.
Not to mention smaller game. You're going to shoot. You're going to go hunt rabbits with a AR-15.
Right.
There was a 60
Yeah.
Minutes did a program last week where they repeated something that they had done earlier, where they got some gelatin, and they fired a round from a 9mm pistol into the gelatin, and they showed that the damage that did. Then they fired a round from the AR-15, and it just utterly destroyed the gelatin. They said that's what it does when it's fired into the bodies of the victims that it hit. It goes in and literally explodes on the inside of the body.
Wow.
Now, if you're talking about people being hit by multiple rounds, anyway, I don't want to paint the gory picture, but I think you
Yeah,
get what I'm saying.
that's so crazy. No, I don't understand it, not at all.
Yeah,
But
neither
who
do
am
I.
I?
Neither do I. Neither do I.
Okay, well, thanks.
Well,
Keep
thanks.
up the good work.
All right, thanks for listening. Thanks for your call. And really, it's the culture of this country, folks. That's what it is. This country was founded on this type of violence. And again, I am not. Hear me. I got to keep saying this because I know somebody out there listening is going to misconstrue what I'm saying. I am not saying that private citizens should not have the right to own a weapon. I am not saying that. All I am saying is that private citizens should not have the right to own military weapons. You want to own a shotgun? Fine. You want to own a hunting rifle? Fine. A 38, a 22, a Glock 9, a 44? Fine. Just make sure you handle it responsibly. I'm saying I am against you owning a military style weapon because you're not in the military. Listen to the right side on No Static Radio. We don't bring the static, but we sure enough bring the noise. Now it's time for me to get to my friends in the National Hypocrisy League, aka the National Football League. Those of you that are familiar with the DeShaun Watson case, DeShaun Watson has been sued now by 24 different masseuses, alleging that he made unwanted and inappropriate sexual advances towards them during massage sessions in Houston. Some are claiming that he offered to pay $100,000 for them to be silent. There's also been reports that have come out. By the way, for all who's saying that, well, I don't really know, so I can't form an opinion, you have access to the transcripts of some of the cases that have been released.
Yep.
And there's a couple out there that are very interesting. One of the masseuses, who is a lesbian, said, and it's right there in the transcript, about how soft his skin and his body was, and that that if she wasn't gay, that she would want to sleep with him. Another one of them wanted to have a sexual relationship with him and did engage in a sexual relationship with him, allegedly. I have to say that because it has not been proven in a court yet. And that because the relationship didn't go where they wanted it to go, now this is why she's part of the lawsuit. Supposedly DeShaun Watson has said that he did have consensual sex with 3 of the masseuses. All right? So we have all of this information out here, and there's going to be a decision that's going to be made in the next few weeks or so.
I'm sorry, Jeff, can I add something else?
Sure.
They also admitted to contacting him personally.
Right, yeah, that too.
They
that
went
too.
After
Yeah.
and outside of their business.
Right.
They went to him repeatedly. So
Yeah,
I don't get it.
there were some that did admit to that as well.
Mm-hmm.
So the National Football League, I'll call it what it really is instead of what I normally call it, which is the National Hypocrisy League, is going to make a decision within the next few weeks or so about what type of action they're going to take with DeShaun Watson. Now, I've heard some reports that some insiders think that he's going to get a 2-year suspension. I don't think that's going to happen. I hear others say 10 games and it'll be appealed and it'll be reduced to 8 games. I've heard some say 8 and appeal reduced to 6. I've even heard some say 6 and it'll be reduced to 4. I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. But here's the hypocrisy in it, folks. Because there's a double standard in the NFL. And the double standard is this. There's one set of rules if you're a player, but there's another set of rules if you're an owner. How do we know that? Well, let's look at it. Robert Kraft, who is the owner of the New England Patriots, and this is nothing that's alleged, okay, this actually happened, was arrested in Jupiter, Florida, in a sex sting of a prostitution ring. Was arrested, okay, as part of a sex sting to bust up a prostitution ring in Jupiter, Florida, that was, oh, by the way, happening at spas, all right? He was arrested as one of the clients. That arrest went away. He never was prosecuted for it. Went away. And the New England Patriots were not fined. The New England Patriots did not lose any draft picks. In other words, there was no disciplinary action taken against an owner who was caught, to use the biblical term about, the woman that was caught in the very act of adultery. Remember that? And Jesus told those who were accusing her, the first one of you who was without sin, throw the stone. Robert Kraft was caught in the very act, folks. He was arrested. Roger Goodell didn't take any action against him. Patriots didn't lose a draft pick, as I said. They weren't fined. They didn't have any of their games that were scheduled that was going to be on national television. They didn't get any of those taken. There was nothing done. You say, oh wait, Jeff, that's an anomaly. That's just one case that you just can't point out. Okay, fine, I understand that. You heard of Jerry Jones? You know who Jerry Jones is, the owner of the Dallas Cowboys. Well, Jerry Jones, and this was reported by the Dallas Morning News of all newspapers, Jerry Jones paid a woman $300,000 to keep silent about the child that he had with her as a result of an adulterous affair. This woman was a flight attendant with American Airlines. And she had a child, a black woman, by the way. She had a child with Jerry Jones. And he paid her $300,000 basically to be quiet. Well, the daughter, who is now 25 years old, is now suing because she wants to be recognized as a child of Jerry Jones. We'll see what happens with that case. But you know what? The Dallas Cowboys did not get fined. The Dallas Cowboys did not lose draft picks. The Dallas Cowboys still get a national game on Thanksgiving every year. So in other words, there was no action taken by the NFL to the Dallas Cowboys for Jerry Jones basically paying a bribe. Oh, there's more. Daniel Snyder, the owner of the Washington Commanders. There's been a long litany of things with that team during his ownership. from sexual harassment in the front offices and in the offices of the team, which caused the firing of their radio broadcast crew for emails that were sent. That's what brought John Gruden down, by the way. They were not looking at John Gruden. They were looking at what was going on within the front office and the hierarchy of the then Washington football team, and that's when they stumbled upon the emails that John Gruden sent that were deemed of racist in nature and cost him his job with the Raiders. By the way, he's got a suit against the NFL right now. He's going to win the suit because the NFL is going to try to keep this hush-hush. But now there's some rumors now that the owners are going to vote to dismiss Daniel Snyder, basically take his team from. But you know why they're doing it, folks? They're not doing it because of the sexual harassment that was going on that was well documented. They're not doing it because he's basically mismanaged that franchise. They're not doing it for any. You know why they're doing it? And this shows the hypocrisy, folks. They are doing it because there is a report out there that's being investigated that Daniel Snyder skimmed off of the top of the gate receipts and therefore did not give the opposing team the percentage of the gate receipts that they were supposed to get when they came into FedEx Field to play the Washington team. That's why they want to get rid of him. You see, Daniel, you're all right if women are being sexually harassed. You're all right if you mismanage your franchise. You're all right if you do all of the other things that I could go on and on talking about that has happened under his ownership. But you better not mess with our money. Folks, this is why I say that the NFL is very similar to the syndicate, to the mob. Because the mob in the 30s had something called a commission that Charles Lucky Luciano was over, where the 5 families would come together and they would divvy up their earnings equally of all the illegal activities that they were doing, and that no one could order a hit on another mob boss without the permission of the commission. And they would use their power to extort unions and extort businesses in New York. You know the story, I don't have to go into it. Well, let's look at the National Football League. You have 32 owners. If a city does not build an owner a brand new facility, and he may kick in some of it, and then again he may not. So they come to that city, Oakland, California, San Diego, California, don't have teams anymore. St. Louis, Missouri, Cleveland, Ohio, who the owner didn't even come to the city. They come to that city and they say this: build me a new facility. And the city says no. And they say, you're either going to build me the new facility or I'm going to move my franchise to a place that will. That's extortion, folks. That's what it is. I mean, they're getting away with it. But if you really think about what the word and the term extortion is in the natural sense of it, that's exactly what that is. That's extortion. Either you build me this new facility or I'm going to whack you. I'm not going to literally kill you like the mob does. But I'm going to whack your city because I'm going to snatch my franchise out of your city that's going to cost your city all of this revenue and take it somewhere else where they're going to do whatever I ask them to do. You tell me. You all that are listening to me are intelligent. And so, just like the mob, a mob boss, a head of a family, could not be whacked, could not be killed unless the other families, the commission agreed on it. An owner cannot lose his franchise unless the other owners agree on it. And now these owners want to move on Dan Snyder because he allegedly was skimming off the top and not giving them their percentage of the receipts, the gate receipts that they were supposed to get. Do you see the hypocrisy in this? Is that there's one set of rules for the owners. Robert Kraft can be literally arrested in a sex sting. No punishment. Jerry Jones, bribery, no punishment.
Did you say Robert Kraft?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, he was the one arrested in the sex sting. No problem.
Jeff, what about
Jerry Jones? Bob Irsay, I didn't even mention him, the Colts owner. You know, because they suspend players for drug use. Bob Irsay was caught with an illegal substance, a pill. The NFL did nothing, folks. Nothing. So again, I'm saying what's good for the goose is good for the gander. If you are going to suspend players for sexual imposition, if you're going to suspend players for domestic violence, if you're going to suspend players for, well, now they don't have that rule anymore about marijuana anymore. But
I'm sorry, Jeff. What about Chad Wheeler? Chad Wheeler brutally beat his girlfriend. He's a white NFL player. His
Right.
girlfriend is black. He brutally beat up his girlfriend, and when they arrested him, he said, "What? She's still living?" First of all, I'm disgusted that they don't even talk about it the way they talk about DeShaun and any other player like us. But he hasn't received any punishment yet.
right, and that one is pending too. But what I'm saying is he's going to get something. But my thing is, and he should, rightfully so. And I'm not on here saying that players should not be disciplined when they step out of line. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is what's good for the goose is good for the gander. If you are going to punish players by suspending them for their various offenses, whatever they are, be they domestic violence, be they sexual, sexual crime, whatever it is, fine. I have no problem with it. But you need to do the same thing to the owners when they get out of line. And see, this is where, once again, is an example of the hypocrisy of the National Football League, where there's one set of rules for the players and one set of rules for the owners. The Patriots should have gotten fined. Or the Patriots should have lost draft picks. There should have been some disciplinary action done to that team because of what Robert Kraft did. The Cowboys, same thing with them, because of Jerry Jones's bribery. Dan Snyder should have lost the team long ago. And now he probably will, but not because of the stuff that happened in the past. He's only going to lose it now because his fellow owners feel like he cheated them out of money. So do you see here? You see the hypocrisy that's going on here, folks? If you're a player and you get out of line, you're suspended. I don't have a problem with it. Fine. They should be. But if you're an owner, well, no, see. So in other words, there's one set of rules for the billionaires, and there's another set of rules for the millionaires or almost millionaires. So that's the clear hypocrisy in that. It's clear. It's clear. Owners can extort cities into giving them sweetheart stadium deals. There is no reason why the Chargers should be in LA right now and not in San Diego, only because of the fact that their owner was greedy. And so he moved the team into SoFi Stadium because the new state-of-the-art stadium was built there in Inglewood. That's the only reason. The fact of the matter is, it really kind of hurts the team because the Chargers really have no fan base. If you watch their game, their so-called home games, there are as many fans from the opposing team there as there are Charger fans there. The city of Oakland supported the Raiders not once but twice, as the Raiders got moved to LA for a few years and then back to Oakland, and they welcomed them back with open arms and they yanked them again. I'm in Cleveland, Ohio. I was going to the Browns games in Cleveland since the 60s. That stadium from the late 60s on was sold out week after week, even during the 70s when they had some horrible teams. There was no fan base like this fan base that loyally supported this team, and yet the greedy owners that run the NFL allow Art Modell to snatch this franchise out of Cleveland and move it to Baltimore because he was losing money. That's because he was a poor businessman. How do you lose money in a league where everybody gets equal amount of money from the television contract? When every game is sold out, you own all the parking, you get a percentage of the parking, percentage of the merchandise is sold, percentage of the concessions and all that. If you're losing money, that means you're a poor businessman. So why should the city suffer because of you being a poor businessman? Because the NFL owners run it like the mob. Yet they'll suspend players, but they won't punish the owners. You're listening to the right side on No Static Radio. We don't bring the static, but we sure to bring the noise. Our call-in number is 216-939-5087. 216-939-5087. Right now, the NBA Finals are going on. If you want to comment on what we just talked about the hypocrisy in the NFL, please feel free to call in on that. But right now, the NBA playoffs are going on right now, and the finals, I should say. And of course, it's between the Golden State Warriors and the Boston Celtics. And Game 1 was this past Thursday. Boston went on what some think was a miraculous type of comeback and pulled out Game 1 after trailing Game 1 by 15 points in the third quarter and pulled it out. So I'm going to give my overview of the finals and also give you a prediction. So this is what I will say. So I'm looking at both teams. I look at the path that both teams took to get here. Now, first of all, let me say this. I don't like either one of these. From a personal standpoint, I don't like either one of these teams. I don't like anything in Boston at all. Because I believe the fan base in Boston, this is just my opinion, you can disagree with it, but I believe the fan base in Boston is, without a doubt, the most entitled, the most myopic, the most whiny fan base in any fan base in the country. Even more whiny and myopic and entitled than the Dookies. Okay? So I can't stand the Patriots. I hate the Red Sox. I don't really follow hockey, so although I was glad when the Bruins got eliminated, even just because they were Boston. This Celtics team, I don't have the same feeling about the team itself that I had about the old Celtic teams that with McHale and Bird and Parrish and ML Carr, those circa 1980s Celtics, or the more recent version that had Kevin Garnett and Paul Pierce on that team, those teams. These guys here, I don't feel the same way about them. I don't have the dislike for them like I have for those teams, the players on those teams. The reason why I don't like the Celtics, this team, is because they're Boston. But, Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, I like their coach, Ime Udoka. I like him. But I am rooting for them now. I'll give that away. And I'll tell you why in a minute. So when I look at the two teams and the path they took, Boston, first round swept the team that at the beginning of the year, many of the experts thought were going to at least be in the Eastern Conference Finals, and if not, the NBA Finals themselves, and that's the Brooklyn Nets. And Boston swept them, although each game was close. But they swept Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant right out of the playoffs. Then in round 2, they had a matchup with the defending world champion Milwaukee Bucks, albeit the Bucks without one of their stars, Chris Middleton. Went to a 7-game series. And really Boston, to be honest with you folks, and I picked Milwaukee to win that series, but to be honest with you, that series should not even gone 7 games, because if you remember that series in game 5, Boston had a 13-point lead, or excuse me, 11-point lead with like 3 minutes left in the game. So they would have gone up 3 games to 2 on Milwaukee, going back to Milwaukee, where they subsequently won game 6 too. But they blew that game, and that was a harbinger of things to come with them, and I'll get to that in a minute. So they blew that game. Milwaukee goes up 3-2. They go back to Milwaukee. Boston wins game 6 in Milwaukee, and then they blow Milwaukee out in game 7 to move on to the Eastern Conference Finals. So you think about it, they went through Brooklyn with Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant. They went through Milwaukee, who were the defending world champions. Now, I do put a little asterisk by that, though, because Milwaukee was playing without Chris Middleton, who was no argument about it, is their second best player. And I think that he would have made a tremendous difference in that series. And I just believe had Chris Middleton not been injured, that Milwaukee would have beat Boston in that series. But they didn't, and Boston moved on. Then in the Eastern Conference Finals, they played the number 1 seed in the East, the Miami Heat. And none of those games until game 7 were close. Every one of those first 6 games were a blowout one way or the other. And the reason that I said the Milwaukee series, game 5, where Boston basically blew that game and threw that game away and gave it to Milwaukee, as it was a harbinger of things to come. Game 7 of the Eastern Conference Finals that just was played 6 days ago, this past Sunday. Boston had a huge lead. They had a 15-point lead with a little more than 2 minutes left in the game. Okay, so that game basically was over. Not, as Lee Corso says, not so fast, my friend. Because if you saw that game, those of you who didn't see it, those of you who don't even follow basketball, just know this, that Miami, actually it was a 13-point lead. Miami went on an 11-0 run. Cut the lead to 2 points with like 40 plus seconds left. Boston came down, missed the shot. Miami gets the rebound. They come down the floor. Now, the way that play played out is Jimmy Butler, who, if you don't follow it, is Miami's star player, basically had a fast break. The only person between him and the basket that would have tied the game and possibly sent it into overtime. And who knows what would have happened in overtime, because Miami would have had all the momentum, because Boston would have basically choked game 7 away to send it in overtime. So the only person between him and tying the game was Al Horford, who was in a very bad defensive position too, if you saw that play. Jimmy Butler could have very easily driven past Al Horford, got to the cup, got a layup, would have tied the game. But what he decided to do, instead of doing what I just said, he decided to pull up, take a 3-pointer, not to tie the game, but to win the game. Now, there was a lot of debate as to whether that was the right play or not. I personally think that it was, and here's why. Miami was exhausted. They were undermanned. They were exhausted, and they wanted to get that game over with. Jimmy Butler knew that if he made that 3, that in all likelihood, even though there was still time left in the game where Boston could have got a shot to either win the game themselves, but the way that momentum would have gone, had Jimmy Butler made the 3 that he pulled up that he missed, in all likelihood, that would have been it. Miami would have won the series. So I just say that so the Milwaukee Game 5 that was a harbinger of things to come with Boston. So Boston went through Miami, Milwaukee, and Brooklyn. 3 really tough teams. The Warriors, on the other hand, listen, you play who you play, all right? So I'm not denigrating anything. I'm just stating the facts here. The Warriors played the Denver Nuggets in the first round, who were Jokic, and that's it, because their other 2 star players were injured. Then they got the Memphis Grizzlies in round 2, and Ja Morant, the Grizzlies star player, franchise player, was injured in the first half of game 3. So they basically played 3.5 games without their star player, and Golden State took them out in 6. And then they got the upset winner, Dallas, who knocked the favorite, Phoenix. Phoenix was favored by many, not only just to come out the West, but to win the title this year. Knocked them out, upset them in 7 games. So they get Dallas in the finals, and they basically obliterated Dallas, as I thought they would, because Dallas again, and this is no knock on Jalen Brunson and some of the other players on the map. Matter of fact, Jalen Brunson's a really good player. He's going to get paid this year because he's a free agent. But basically, it was Luka. And so, so Golden State took care of them. So the 2 teams had different paths. I believe Boston had a much tougher path to get to the finals than what Golden State did. But both are here. So this is how I see this. One of the trademarks of the Warriors is this. Their so-called, what they call death lineup. And that lineup is, they go with the 3 guards, Steph Curry, Jordan Poole, Klay Thompson, and then they also go with Andrew Wiggins. And then they have Draymond Green. That's their 5. Now, that 5, they call it the death lineup because all 5 of them are very active. They stay in motion the whole time, running through screens and what have you. And it's hard to keep up with those guys. And they come off screens, and because of their ball movement and body movement, they usually wind up with a good look at either a 3-pointer or a drive to the basket, whatever the case may be. They usually always get good shots out of that. And then on the defensive end of the floor, because of their quickness, they can overcome their lack of size, and they can cause havoc on the defensive end. So they call that the death lineup. They call it the death lineup because most teams do not have an answer to that. And when they put that death lineup in, you see them go on these ridiculous 18-2 or 23-1, these ridiculous type runs like that, which in all intents and purposes puts the game away for them. However, the Celtics are, in my opinion, the only team in the NBA right now that has an answer for that death lineup, because the Celtics, because of their length and athleticism, so they switch every screen. So this way you have somebody who is athletic, who is long, and who is quick, that can pick these guys up when they're coming off these weaves and these screens like this, and can counter that. So when Golden State goes with the death lineup, Boston can come back with their, so I'm dubbing it the anti-death lineup, with Jason Tatum, who they list him as 6'8", but he really looks more like he's 6'10", with the long wingspan. Jaylen Brown, 6'7", athletic. Robert Williams, the center who can switch every position. Derek White, who's 6'5", with length and athleticism. And Marcus Smart, who was the defensive player of the year. They switch everything, and they just have not started doing that just in this series. They've been doing this ever since January of this year, when Boston had the best record in the league. So that poses a whole different problem to the Warriors, one that they haven't had to deal with before, because no other team has been able to guard them and switch and put length and athleticism on them like the Celtics can do. Now, I'm not overreacting over one game. But I did see things in that game Thursday night that that could be a trend in the series. For example, in the first quarter, Steph Curry just went off. He had 21 points in the first quarter, set the NBA Finals for most points in the first quarter of an NBA Finals game when he had 21 in the first quarter. And as great as he is, if you were watching that game, you saw that many of those shots that he was making, those were wide open looks for three from him, and those are like layups for him. It's I give the devil his due. He's the greatest shooter of all time. But what the Celtics did is they made an adjustment, and they started, instead of backing up on him, they came up on him, and therefore made it more difficult for him. Now he still scored, because you're not going to shut down a player of his capabilities entirely, but they made it more difficult for him because of what I just said a few minutes ago. The other thing too is with Klay Thompson, what you all have to remember is he's coming off of not only a ACL surgery, but also he's coming off a torn Achilles. Folks, for basketball players, or athletes period, I'm not just going to single out basketball, but especially basketball, when you tear your Achilles, you are not the same player that you were before. Now, I know from niggas say, what about Kevin Garnett? Look what he tore his Achilles, and look what he's doing. Listen, folks, Kevin Garnett is an anomaly. He's not the norm. Most players, basketball players, when they have an Achilles tendon injury and tear their Achilles tendon like Klay Thompson did, they can come back and play. Some never come back. And those who do come back, but they are not at the same level that they were before. So you're not getting the Klay Thompson that you got pre his injury. All right? It's not saying that he's not a good player. He still is. So when I look at the size and athleticism of Boston, that they can match up with anybody that the Warriors put out there, and that they have the antidote, at least in my opinion, for their death lineup. And then if the Warriors want to go big and put Kevon Looney and Draymond Green in, that kind of plays into Boston's hands too, because as you saw on Thursday night, when they go with that lineup, basically the Celtics are leaving Looney and Draymond Green by themselves and daring them to shoot. And then using the guys as guarding them to go over onto Golden State shooters. There are two X factors in this series, the way I see it. The X factor on the Warriors is Jordan Poole. Is he going to continue his stellar play that he's had throughout the playoffs? Now, the other night, he was kind of frustrated by what was going on and how he was being guarded. Now, part of that could be is that Steph was so hot in the first quarter that usually what they do is they sit Steph down for the last 2 minutes of the first quarter, bring Jordan Poole in, and let him go the last 2 minutes of the first quarter and play into the second quarter before they bring Curry back. But because Curry was so unconscious on Thursday, they didn't do that. So maybe Jordan Poole didn't get into the normal rhythm he does. I don't know. We'll see on tomorrow. But I think he is the X factor for the Warriors. The X factor for the Celtics is Derek White, their mid-season pickup from San Antonio. And listen, folks, his shooting was not a fluke, right? Because he's done that he's had great shooting games in each round of these playoffs. So this is how I see it. Boston's already up one game tonight. So they already taken home court advantage, but we've seen that Golden State can win and will probably win in Boston because, Miami won 2 games in Boston, and so did Milwaukee. So Golden State is going to win a game in Boston to get the home court advantage back. I see a 7-game series. And the irony of it, folks, and it's not lost upon a lot of us here in Cleveland, is that these games shadow the very same dates that the 2016 finals shadow. The 2016 final started on Thursday, June 2nd. It was game 1. That was at the old Oracle Arena. Then game 2 was on Sunday, June 5th. Both were out there and Golden State won. So, and then the games in Cleveland were the same days of the week and dates on the calendar that the games in Boston will be. And game 7 that year was June 19th on Father's Day. Well, guess what? Game 7 this year, if it goes 7 games, will be June 19th on Father's Day this year. And I think I see it going 7. And I see the similar result. No, the Cavs aren't going to win it. But I got Boston in 7. Keep in mind, as I tell you all the time during football season, this is for entertainment purposes only. Do not go out and bet the house on what I say on the right side. But I just think that Boston's length and athleticism and their answer for the death lineup is what's going to get them over the hump. And I got Boston in 7. Real quickly, our hero for the week, I'm nominating President Joe Biden for his speech on Thursday night. And I echo you, Mr. President. Enough. Do something. He threw the gauntlet down to the Congress and the Senate. Let's see what they do. Our zero of the week is the National Rifle Association, who had the gall to continue to have their conference in Houston, Texas last weekend, about 300 miles east of the tragic shooting in Uvalde, Texas. And they decided to have their convention anyway.
So trifling.
Very trifling. And I already have given you some of the statements that were said there. So, National NRA, you are our zero of the week. You've been listening to The Right Side on No Static Radio. We don't bring the static, but we sure enough bring the noise. We're here every Saturday from 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. on the greatest station in the nation and from the greatest location in the nation. But right now, I see that my time is up. Thank you very much for your time. And until next Saturday at 3 p.m., Shalom.
Before closing, we just want to remind you that the Trauma Recovery Center is here to help. If you, a loved one, or a friend, or anyone that you see in trouble is in need of help, please call the Trauma Recovery Center at 216-644-5487. They will come to you wherever they are. They are free. They are 24/7. They are confidential. They offer services for food, clothes, safety, support, and a whole lot more. So don't let violence control you. You can break free and are seeking help. They can give you the tools to rebuild your life and your health. So give them a call, 216-644-5487. The Trauma Recovery Center of Northeast Ohio, also affiliated with the Center for Families and Children. And finally, we just love and like to thank you for tuning in to The Right Side with your host, Jeff Doggett, on a station where we don't bring no static, but we sure enough bring the noise, nostaticradio.net. Make sure you check us out on social media, where we absolutely love to hear from you, on Facebook.com/NoStaticRadio LLC, on Twitter at NoStatic_radio, on Instagram at TheReal_NoStaticRadio, and on YouTube at No Static Radio. Also, if you guys would like to listen to replays of this show and others on NoStaticRadio.net, please make sure you check us out on Mixler.com or Mixcloud.com. Just type in No Static Radio on the toolbar for replays of this show and others. And for continuous streaming, check us out on TuneIn.com, live on LiveRadio.net, or MediaQ for continuous streaming of this show and all others on the platform. And for all things No Static Radio, including up-and-coming events, merchandise, and an in-depth look at all our great show hosts here, please check out our website, which is under construction at www.nostaticradio.net. Thank you so much for tuning in on this sensational Saturday. And you know what it is, we've got more music for your weekend listening pleasure here on your Voice of the Revolution, NoStaticRadio.net. Powered by Google, sponsored by Lamont Avenue Wines, the Cleveland Rugby League, and designed me exclusively. Be safe, be well, and have a great weekend.